My answer is that we are saddened and uplifted. And the more we think into my father's life and the more stories we hear, because everybody has stories, the more uplifted, the more empowered, the more responsibility we feel to live up in a small way to his life. I'm just going to say this about him, which I didn't write. I mean, he was a legend. If you read the story, just legendary. His tzedakah, his humility, I mean, all of his virtues, his honesty. But one thing everybody can learn, it's a simple thing. My father gave it his all. Whatever God gave him, he used for the cause, everything. His wealth, his time, his energy, his talent, his smile, everything's for the cause. And
what did you tell us? Before
yeah, everything's l'chai lamim. And on his grave, it was easy to write because usually when you write descriptions on a stone, you don't want to exaggerate them because if you exaggerate, it's just doing a disservice to the soul up there because they hold you up to it. Look, that's what they're saying about you. Just makes the embarrassment greater if the person is not. But my father's case was the opposite. Each thing's not, it's the same more, it's not enough. And one of the things is that he so greatly looked up to scholars, Meikar Rabbanan. He had this deep, healthy envy of Torah scholars. Because he grew up in Melbourne before the war, the yeshiva started after Lubavitch came after my maternal grandparents came and he married my mother and he became the first secretary from day one for 50 years, 40, 50 years and fundraiser. But so he always envied and a tremendous envy and he was so proud of his children that we could learn a little bit something.
Amazing.
But I'm saying he gave his all and he loved I remember for Pesach, for weeks before Pesach, my father would sit with, in those days, this was before Art Scroll, there were very little books in English, very little. Anything came out until it got to Australia. And my father grabbed it and he had a couple of books there in English and prepare weeks before, preparing for the Seder. Not that he spoke so much, he just wanted to know, he wanted us to. And then before every Shabbos morning, a translated Chumash was a rare thing. Because Maiva said there was a translation. I'll never forget this brown Chumash with linear translated. I wake up in the morning, my father's at the breakfast table with the coffee and going through the parasha. Never failed. Minyan, since he's 13, never missed a minyan. Never. Unless he was traveling or he was sick, he God forbid, couldn't go. So giving his all that we can all learn. Okay, Lama Landon, we'll start. Let's go, friends.
Oliver Shalom.
Thank you. Yeah. So you have on your page, I'm going to move rapidly because there's so much to cover, and that is, so the whole Achma Anya, which you have in front of you, yeah, or you have a page 8 if you want to use the Hagadah here. So Magid begins the story of the commandment to tell the story of Pesach. That is a commandment to observe Seder night, and the Torah says you shall say it in response to the questions of your child. How does it begin? So you see the headline Magid. So we say, page 8. We'll say just in the English because we're going to move quickly. This is the bread of affliction which our forefathers ate in the land of Egypt. All who are hungry, let them come and eat. All who are needy, let them come and celebrate Pesach with us. Now we are here. Next year may we be in the land of Israel. Now we are slaves. Next year may we be free men. That's how the story of Pesach begins. Here are the questions, rapid fire questions, one after the other, to be answered with one insight. First question is, why is this written here as part of the story of Pesach? There's no story here. This is not the story of Pesach. The story begins the next paragraph. The story begins when the child asks, because as I just told you, that the Torah commands you should say it in response to your children, and there's 4 children, which we discuss in detail later. That's where Magid begins. So why does Magid begin here? And just by the way, it's a beautiful article by Guy Tzvi Freeman. He said, notice, you have to read this statistic. I looked it up on AI. I thought he was exaggerating. He's not. Where do I have it? If I can find it. Anyway, the average teacher, it's crazy. Where did and I have to read it to because you will not believe it. I have it in my photos. Yes, I kept it. The average middle grade teacher asks the students 400 questions a day. Most of them inane. That's about 2 per minute. After 14 and a half years, that's 1 million questions. The average student, however, generally asks only 2 or 3 questions a week. Most commonly, can I go to the bathroom? In high school, not much better, 10 questions a day. Preschool kids who ask an average, in high school, they'll ask on the average of 10 a day. When they were children, 100 questions a day. What he's saying is that the child is naturally inquisitive. The Torah way to educate is not to ask the questions, to get them to ask a question. We see this here tonight. The whole thing begins with the child asking. And we do things that the kid isn't asking. We're going to do things to make them ask. The dipping of the one of the reasons of the dipping of the vegetable in salt water is that the child should ask. And the child asks, what do we answer? We say, that's a good question. And that's already something. Now we're beginning the journey of chinuch. He says we got it all wrong. We see that chinuch is encouraging the child's voice and encouraging the questions, not silent, bam, 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 bam. Me asking you, repeating back what I want to hear. This is our generation, very powerful message. Okay, so that's our question. This is not the story of Pesach. The story of Pesach begins with the questions. Okay, general. Now let's look at each statement. There are 3 statements here. Why are they lumped? They're independent ideas. Why are they lumped together in one paragraph as if it's one unified concept? First, we say it's the bread of affliction, poor man's bread. Then we make an invitation. And then we say next year we should be free. Why are they put together as if one flows to the next? We don't see the connection. Next question. Clear? Now let's look at each of the statements independently. There, one is more puzzling than the next. We say this is the lachma anya that their forefathers ate in the land of Egypt. No. We don't. That's not the matzah we eat. We eat matzah. We say this later in the Hagadah in black and white. Among Gamliel says we eat matzah because when they left Egypt, there wasn't enough time to rise. That's how we eat matzah. Now let's be clear on the question. It's true they were commanded to eat matzah the night before they went out of Mitzrayim. They were commanded. But that's not why we eat it. The Torah itself says we eat because what happened, and they didn't expect this. There wasn't enough time for the dough to rise. That's what we have to remember. The Avodah Zarah explains, so why did Hashem tell them to eat matzah the night before? The Yidden didn't know this, but Hashem knew that the next day they're going to leave in haste. Already tonight they're eating matzah. But we eat not because of their commandment, but we eat because of what happened later, the next morning. So how can we say, pointing to the matzah, that the matzah we eat is the matzah that they eat in Egypt? No, we eat matzah because it wasn't for dough to rise when they left Egypt. Clear? It's a strong question. All these questions have many answers, but the next statement, all who are hungry, let them come and eat. All are needy, let them come and celebrate the Passover, Pesach with us. Hello, this is the 5th step of the Seder. You made Kiddush already. Now you're inviting. Now you're Mr. Hospitable Moshe Gross, and you're putting out the whole, anybody who wants, hello. No one hears you. What? This invitation you say before you come home from shul, or weeks before Pesach. Not now. So that's puzzling. But the most puzzling is the last statement. Now we are here. Next year may we be in Eretz Yisrael. Now we are slaves. Next year may we be free men. Hello, aren't we celebrating freedom tonight? Here it says we're not. We hope to be by next year. This destroys the whole Pesach. We just finished saying in Kiddush, Zman Cheroseinu, the festival of our freedom, which we say throughout the whole davening, and here we make a statement, we're not free. We hope to be next year. So what's the whole Pesach? So the whole thing is very puzzling. The answer to the above is this. It's a moira that we never learned this. Okay, this is, you should say this at your Seder because this is like eye-opener and sets the foundation for the whole Seder and the whole Pesach. And that is, we're going to revisit this puzzling paragraph, and we're going to see, my dear friends, that it answers some very disturbing questions that does not let the child or anyone to get into the Hagadah, to get into Pesach. He has strong questions. What is his questions? He's sitting there and he can't understand. He knows, or she knows, that God took us out of Egypt. God gave us our freedom. And furthermore, as promised to Avraham, we went out with great wealth. Here's the big question. Had we gone out of Egypt on our own effort, we broke out, we escaped, rebellion, that it doesn't last, the freedom doesn't last, to be expected. We face further challenges and further servitudes and further. But Hashem gave it to us. That should have been forever and irrevocable. Why didn't the freedom last? And he knows history, and he's sitting at the table. Could be Seder, who was in Auschwitz, and that was much worse than Mitzrayim. Why didn't it? How could it not last? If that God gave it, that should be forever. And similarly, he looks around the table. He himself could be poor. How's there poor Yidden? Hashem gave us the promised Avraham, and we left with the great wealth. No force in the world should be able to take it away from us. The person makes wealth for himself, and the stock market makes it, he loses business. But Hashem granted it. It was a divine promise. That's forever. So this is like, what's going on? And a similar question, kind of, you could ask the same kind of question. Good, we're living here in Canada, we're free. So when we say, we're celebrating Zman Hussein, but this is very new, my dear friends. For 2,000 years, we were not free. What did Pesach mean? What did Pesach mean in Auschwitz? And they did observe it. The joke was, you didn't find human everything. Those who observed it with Mesiras Nefesh, of course, they didn't have wine, but they substituted, they squeezed, they made matzah from sawdust, they found flour smuggled from the kitchen. There's stories, and they're recorded. But the joke was that bitter herbs we don't need. This is we have plenty. Mortar we have plenty. So they were huddled in their huts there, and the one who knew the Hagadah by heart was saying, and the Yidden was sitting and listening. Just also understand this: they're exhausted, they're starving, they're close to death, and they're up at night listening to the Seder. Now, what does this mean? Okay, it's reminiscing, it's the childhood. No, it was a real. But what kind of Seder? What are they celebrating? In the barracks of Auschwitz in Treblinka, Rahman Litzalon. These are disturbing questions. What happened to the freedom? To answer, before we get to the details of the story, this paragraph was composed. We're going to revisit it line by line, and we're going to see the answer. Let's begin the paragraph again. This is the bread of affliction which our forefathers ate in the land of Egypt. Gewalt. Everybody knows we eat matzah because of what happened when they left. What's the Hagadah saying? Answer, Kindalach. We never left Mitzrayim. We left it physically, but there will be many Egypts to follow. This is a bombshell. There was never a complete redemption. That right away answers this question. What happened to the freedom? We never got it fully. What happened to the wealth? We never got it fully. Nothing that permanent, that was lasting, happened at the moment of the Exodus. Even when they left Egypt, they were still in Egypt. A different kind of Egypt. So this is, whoa. No freedom? No. And that explains the connection to the next statement. The next statement is obviously not an invitation because nobody can hear it, but it acknowledges the need to invite. That's why there are hungry people and we have to invite them, and they are needy because the wealth didn't last, the freedom didn't last, and there's work to be done. So it's not an invitation, but it's the acknowledgement of the whole need to invite, to reach out to the hungry and the poor and the needy, which this celebrant himself could be one of them. So what do we celebrate? So then what do we celebrate? Comes the final statement. It's true now we're here, and it's true we're slaves, but we can be free at any moment. Why? Now, why? The key to redemption was given to us, or to rephrase that. Hashem began the process, and that which he began is irrevocable, and it's up to you and I to complete it. What did Hashem begin? So to understand this, let's visit the wicked son for a moment. It's on your text, and it's also, you can look at the Hagadah on page. We have to move quickly, friends. So we at page 11. I'm sorry, page 10. The wicked son. So you remember there are 4 sons. The order of where do we get the 4 sons from? Because in 4 places in the Torah speaks about the Seder night in context with a son, with a child. If we analyze the psukim, we can see that one is wise, one is wicked, one is simple, and one doesn't know how to ask. Now, I've got news for you. They're no different in age and no different in intelligence. Their difference is engagement, spiritual standing. So it begs the question, the order, if that's so why is the wicked one second should be last? Chacham, Rasha, Tam, the wicked should be last. The answer, my dear friends, is because the wicked son, he has a question. He's saying, you and not me. He's moved. He's easier to reach than the other 2. The Tam, the same intelligence, the same age. He asks a general question. He's polite. He's came to a Seder, sit there, not saying anything. So he asks a general question. If you lead a general question. The one who doesn't know how to ask is because he can't bring himself to ask a question. It's going to keep the Seder going 5 minutes longer and he can't stand it. When's it going to be over? He's the most difficult. He just sits there. He has to be there. Not a word. So how do you deal with him? The Torah says, at psachle, the feminine approach, not ata, but at. You can't come and I'll explain to you, and then I'm not interested. You have to nurture. You got to find the spark like the mother and nurture and find and embrace this child. He's the most challenging. It takes the feminine touch. And the most challenging child, the Rebbe says, is the 5th one. It doesn't come to the Seder. So I just want to tell you, what do we say to the 5th son? Nothing. We have to look at ourselves. What did we do to Yiddishkeit that the kid won't even show up? What kind of Yiddishkeit was he exposed to? We have to do the change. The 5th child with the conversations here. But at any rate, am I getting to my question? So the wicked child, he's the only one, aside from the Chacham, that has a question. And he's angry also. He's saying, you, not me. That's why you put him second, because he's really the easiest to engage. So now comes the real question. So what do we tell him? The wicked son says, what is all this for you? So we say to him, you say you and you're excluding yourself. Well, listen here. This is what it appears. You're excluding yourself? Well, I'll have you know that had you been in Mitzrayim, you wouldn't have left. So the Rebbe asks, actually it says when Antonio is the Alexander word, the Alexander Rebbe. Alexander, your mishpacha, your mother, your grandmother, Alexander Chassidim. He says he was killed. He was able to leave. He said, I'm not going. I'm staying with my Chassidim and my Yidden, and perished. He said a picture of his face like a malach. He says this word. He asked, we slammed the door in the Rosh's face? What this is the Yiddish way? What are we saying to him? Says that Alexander, no, look deeper. What are we saying to him? We're saying, had you been in Mitzrayim, you wouldn't have left. You say you don't want to be part of it. That was an option back then. But look, Mitzrayim, we're all post-Mitzrayim. You're a Yid like I am, and it's not going to help. You're the same Jew as I am. And that's the essence of the celebration of Pesach. As we all know, 80% of the Jews refused to go. They sank to the 50th level of impurity, which is the point of no return. For the moment of the Exodus, that's not possible. No Jew can extinguish the spark. That's what God has guaranteed. You're born a Jew, you're forever a Jew. That's the big simcha. So now what's left? Now we are slaves. We're still in Golus. But our neshama burns brightly within each and every Jewish heart. Let's redeem it. Let's decide tonight to live authentically Jewish, and we'll complete the redemption process. That's the whole celebration of Pesach. That's the whole celebration. So in summary, what happened at the moment of the Exodus, was it a complete redemption? No. But the critical part God did, and that is your soul, your Jewishness, Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people collectively will live eternally, And individually, the Jew, no matter what you do, you are a Yid. You cannot sink to the point of oblivion. The spark is there. That's what we told the wicked son. Back then in Egypt, if you said you were not me, you had the option. It's not an option anymore. So come here and I'll give you a big hug because we're the Zelbe Yid. And thank you for bringing this out with your question. That's, says Alexander Rebbe, the way you have to answer the question. And just by the way, Hake Yeshina blunt his teeth. What's this got to do with anything? Blunt his teeth. What does it mean? So one of the answers is that we call attention to the teeth. What is? Very often, why the kid is rejecting is because it's too much and you're asking me too much and I can't do it. He sees it as an all or nothing thing. And I'll never be like my father. I'll never be like this one, so why even bother? So we tell them the teeth. It's one morsel at a time. The teeth break the food up. It's a whole big bread. You cut it, and each mitzvah that you do, you internalize. That's everything. Hashem isn't asking you to be. It's this moment and this mitzvah. That's very often the answer. Remember, Hakeshina. It's not all or nothing. Your mitzvah is everything. Every bite, every morsel is everything. It's a critical message to our children. It's that you never say be like this and be like this one. No, it's be you, and each thing that you do is infinitely as precious. Hashem loves it, and it's part of your life. That's what we told the wicked sons, the most embracing. So now, again, we're going to stop in a minute. So revisiting the paragraph, now we understand that it's an answer to what happened to the freedom, eternal. No, we're still in Egypt. There's work to be done, and that's why we have to give tzedakah and invite people physically. Spiritual is work. But we can be free, the third statement. We all can. Tonight we can make it. Today we can make it happen. How? By just liberating and giving expression, each one in their way, on the Neshama, and we will complete the process that Hashem began at Yitzias Mitzrayim with the Exodus. Okay, folks, share this at your Seders.